How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the James Ladd Podcast. Today, my guest is Autumn from Cultivo, from so many things. You have so many. You're like the Ryan Seacrest of cannabis.
Holy shit. That's too much responsibility. I can't take that. We're gonna have to peel a couple jobs off.
We can take it down a couple notches, but like literally, I feel like you are well versed in so many different things. We've known each other for quite a long time.
Long time.
And
I don't even know how many years.
Yeah,
at this point.
A lot of experience. We've seen different places together. Colombia. We've been to events together. Lots of shows. Lots of expos. Cannabis science. Good stuff. And we have a lot of mutual friends. Ed Rosenthal.
Absolutely.
Gotta love Ed and Jane.
Love Ed.
So tell us a little bit of history. I guess we'll touch on history a little bit and we'll dive into some fun stuff. But your history, how you got started with cannabis, where it all began.
So I got started in cannabis actually right down the street from where we are now, off of Fruitvale in Oakland. Got my first grow house there about 20 years ago and set it up with 8 lights and a tray of train wreck and grew 1.5 pounds per light my first run, which was really good at the time. I know that's embarrassing to say now. But
no, that's amazing. I mean, 1.5 pounds, you were doing it right. And that's pretty rare. I mean, I think women sometimes, for whatever reason, have this association with this plant and they get better results sometimes right out the gate. I mean,
I think it's kind of like a chef, right? Like our attention to detail and the ability to multitask a bunch of different things at the same time.
Yeah.
And kind of keep that mental list of all of them.
Sure.
Really helps. And definitely seen some amazing female cultivators come out recently where it didn't used to be that way. I don't think I met another female grower for probably 10 years. The whole time I was doing it. And, I knew one.
It was a man's world. And then there was the rare women like yourself. You know, my aunt, she was growing for medicine back in the 90s, probably even into the 80s. But yeah, it was definitely mostly men.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and you're one of those boundary pushers who kind of had to be the first in a lot of regards as far as consulting and stuff like that. You were the only female consultant that I knew of back in the day.
Well, I'm an owner's rep, not a consultant.
Sure.
So I like to explain the difference.
Absolutely.
Consultants in the cannabis industry typically get a bad name. And I find that one of the reasons for that is because they double dip. They'll take money from their clients and then they'll take money from everything that's incentivized all the way up that they recommend to the grow. So the way we set up our practice was to be an owner's rep, which is traditional in construction world, to kind of back the client, get them the best possible price and not take any incentives sideways. But yes, it's consulting of sorts because you are guiding the process.
You are guiding. And I think it was just everybody used consultant back in the day. And now it's really evolved into something much bigger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I didn't even know what a consultant was when I started consulting. There wasn't any.
There was no position called consultant.
Our mutual friend, Ed Rosenthal, kind of pulled me up to Canada and they were working on what was the largest grow in the world at the time, 300,000 square foot facility in Nova Scotia. And it was the first time I've ever met Ed. And, I'd met him once here in Oakland before, and then we ended up going to Canada and working on that facility together. And that kind of snowballed into what became Cultivo, which I started for $10,000 that I basically maxed out on credit cards and then became what it was built to be, which was one of the largest design build firms in the space, certainly.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Pretty awesome. And that, just as far as a reference on time, that was almost 10 years ago. Or maybe
probably about that, maybe a little longer. I consulted for a couple of years under another company, and became their director of construction under their brand, and then started my own about 3 years later.
Yeah. And you work with some of the biggest brands out there, Jungle Boys, Mango. You're pretty tight with Mango. I don't know how much you've done with them, but we're seem friends. To know everybody.
Yeah, we. I can't take credit for anything that he's done, but we definitely have our friend group that we bounce ideas off of each other and what's working and what isn't working. And
yeah, I mean, you're part of the NetFM crew. We did the NetFM class,
That's
the first
right.
cannabis NetFM class. That was great.
That was a lot of fun. And I still talk to Alistair all the time, still buy Netafim products all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the Fresno crew. So it was me, you, Plum Dog, Mango.
Mango was there. Sky was there.
Yeah.
And a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
And it was a really cool class. We got really high pretty much the whole time, but yeah, good fun.
I took good notes though.
Yeah, me too. I still have my notes. I still use a lot of NFM products that I would never have used, like the 4-way manifolds that you can stack.
Yeah.
I learned about those in that class, and I still like those manifolds.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
No, and I actually talked to Alistair the other day. I'm like, can we put together another one of these classes? And I was going to send my whole team down there and, learn how to use all the NMCs and stuff. And, he's like, no, now we bring the class to you. Like, if you set it up and you buy the system, we'll come out and we'll set you all up and we'll train your whole staff. It's like,
nice.
Perfect.
Yeah, they just
better to do it on a working facility anyway, right?
Totally.
But that was
in
cool.
that environment, like, yeah, instead of showing you how to do it in their environment, they could actually do it in your environment and kind of set you up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Test all the pressures, make sure it's working appropriately. So
amazing people.
Yeah. Great service.
Yeah. Let's talk about Micah. I love talking about Micah. He's
Micah.
Micah. He's a very dear mutual friend of both of ours. They're really close. I mean, he's like family to both of us.
Yeah.
I started breeding with Micah, and you started growing with Micah to a degree, and that's how we know each other, the same circle.
So did Micah? Were you growing before you met Micah, or did he
I was
kind
growing,
of?
No, I was growing with a couple other friends.
And then
several
guys
other
met?
Friends through, and then I met through Micah, and we had a mutual friend. He didn't really want to introduce me to Micah, and then we randomly met at a restaurant, and then we've been friends ever since.
So that was 20 plus years ago.
I met him originally in 97.
Okay.
I think 98 maybe.
I've known Micah since 4th grade, and he was my older brother's friend and friends with Ryan Gatika and some of these other guys that are all kind of close in our circle. And, he was growing plants when he was like 16, like out in the hills of Santa Barbara or whatever it was. And so he always had this, wonderful relationship with the plant. And then I moved to San Francisco Bay Area when I was like 18. And Micah was kind of one of the only people I knew here.
Yeah.
And saw his setup for the first time, which was basically him and his couple of roommates had octagons set up in their basement, with the tube lights and the...
Yeah, so it was probably 98 or something like that because he lived in Oakland, in the Oakland Hills, and we had octagons. I met him because he came over and helped build an octagon, and we both liked partying back then and good weed, and he always had like the sour and the chem and
the
and those
dog.
were the OG. We had OG, we had the dog,
the original dog.
Yeah.
DAWG.
DAWG. I talked about it on my last podcast too.
Did you?
It's funny.
Yeah. I missed that
that's
one.
a classic. It's still around.
Do you still have that?
Yeah, it's still around. Yeah.
All right, we're gonna have to talk after the show.
Oh yeah. Well, now everything's got to go through tissue culture. It's like we're putting everything through tissue culture to clean it. Most of the stuff, if it doesn't have hoplite and viroid, it has other, systemic bacteria and other pathogens. So we try to keep start clean, stay clean. That's Justin's motto. I love it.
So I know you're a purist and you like a lot of the same old school gassy stuff that I do.
Oh yeah.
So is that a part of your process of bringing back these kind of older genetics through tissue culture and reinvigorating them?
I think that gas will always come back. I think that these things for connoisseurs, they like this, and the thing is some of them may change. Like we have, the Chem D was the original like super foul gas. And then GMO is just like a brighter Chem D, but they're both amazing. It's just different. And I think these things will change and people will breed gas. But I think right now at this moment in time, people want color. It's just such a weird thing that like they put a high demand and high price on color that you got to have color in your stuff. And there's gassy stuff with color. I mean, even like Jokers, the strain Jokers, that has a strong gas and it's purple.
Yeah.
But I will always breed with gas and go back towards those things because those are the things that I enjoy the most.
Right.
And they're nostalgic because they remind me of childhood or growing up, hanging out with Micah back in the day or hanging out with certain friends. It reminds, like anytime I smell sour diesel, it reminds me of Josh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
Josh would have these pounds of sour diesel and they were outdoor and they were so sticky, and you'd open the bag and it would just hit you in the face. You know, you don't really see that as often anymore. Even with the best stuff, it's very rare to have stuff where you open it and it's just like this bright punch to the face with terps.
Mm-hmm.
Terps and thiols.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember like back in the day, you know, you'd have a specific grower and they maybe grew 2 or 3 things. Like, this is my 2 or 3 things. That's it. You know, purple Urkel and sour D. And then they had, you know,
Blue Dream.
Blue Dream. Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with Blue Dream.
But people really perfected the process because they didn't have 10, 11, 12 strains in one room that they were trying to acclimate to the same lighting.
And different ones every cycle. It's like you're growing the same thing over and over. I feel like the best growers are the ones that have really perfected that specific cultivar.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the future, there's going to be directions that come with your cultivars.
Yeah.
You get it from either tissue culture or whatever, the facility that you're getting that clone from to grow it out, or seed from. And you can give people directions like, you're going to need more nitrogen, you're going to need more of this. And, you know, I think these harvest windows, they're great, like 70 days, but that's also specific to the environment as well.
In the lighting too.
Absolutely.
Like, it'd be nice when we can kind of fine tune those spectrums. I know that there are certain cultivars that just suffer under LEDs and don't do well,
right.
You know, and then once you're able to play with that spectrum along with the environment, you can really fine tune it. So I think that's the future.
Yeah, it's all fine tuning. And I think I keep on talking about data points a lot with people and even on the show, but collecting the more data points we have, the more we can improve stuff, including our palettes, including the way we do lighting, including nutrition. It's like data points are just so huge.
I'm big on data points. You know that, but
totally. You're big on taking notes.
I'm a good note taker.
You are a good note taker.
But yeah, data points specifically, like now we've got, you know, we're doing outdoor this year. So it's
outdoors a little more difficult. Yeah. You can take all the best notes in the world and the next year could be completely different.
Yeah. God's just like, nope, we're going to start in early rain. We're going to have a, you know, hurricane in August.
Hurricane in August, and then we're going to have humidity of 85% for the next 2 weeks.
Which was amazing because we're on our last bit of stretch before everything flips. And so they've loved this weather so far.
That's awesome.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, I just drove down from Oregon and we had like torrential downpour coming into California. Like, I mean, I think that's good. It's good for the air quality for sure.
Yeah. Any rain's good for California.
Any rain's good for
not
California.
necessarily for plants at the end of the cycle, like those early October rains.
Yeah, especially if you grow really big buds and you get the issues, botrytis and other things like that.
Yeah, we're doing more row crop style, so more plants closer together, less volume or mass.
I prefer that, especially at scale. I mean, I know there's guys, Mendo Dope, these guys growing these, 20-pound plants that are 25 feet wide by 20 feet tall, and really cool. I mean, it's
cool.
awesome.
And everyone's got their own style, and I'm not one to knock anyone's style, but I do feel that it's partially left over from the 99 plant count limit days where
absolutely,
you had to grow the biggest plant as possible. You get one harvest a year, and that's
or you could only have 6 plants, and you're like, I'm going to do the 6 biggest friggin' plants.
Plants I can. But when you try to process it and take down that mass, again, botrytis, pest pathogens for sure. But then even processing it, like 75% of that plant is junk.
Yeah.
Right. And you're still only pulling your top buds and your outliers. And then you have all this mass in the middle that's basically worthless.
Right. What's your take on autoflower? It's a touchy subject.
Autoflower, I look forward to the future of autoflower.
Yeah.
I don't think it's there yet. But I think it's getting there. And I think for, it depends what you're doing with it. If you're making extract products, carts, edibles, like definitely, absolutely a place in the market for it. I'm going to run them next year and see how we like them. I might give you a call for some advice.
Yeah, I definitely have some autoflowers for you.
Yeah.
And I think at scale, when you're looking at doing 100 acres or 200 acres or 300 acres, autoflowers definitely make sense because they're very predictable.
Oh, yeah.
So,
scale.
And I think in the right place, in the right use, they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. And we're getting very distinct profiles, and we're getting stuff that's so much more consistent, where there's less phenotypical variation, and but again, I think there's more work that needs to be done. I agree for sure.
Yeah.
And it's getting there, because if you look at where it is now compared to 10 years ago, it's a whole different ballgame. You asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, nah, I'm never touching autoflowers. I don't want to breed that stuff.
Yeah.
I was in Spain looking at plants that were this tall that were yielding like 7 grams. And why would you grow a 7-gram plant, unless that's all you can do?
Yeah. But if you grow them 12 inches apart,
totally,
all the way down, and then double stack your rows vertical,
yeah,
you got an outdoor sea of green.
So let's talk about Chevy Volts.
Oh.
I love my Chevy Volt.
The best kept secret in the industry. But it's not a secret anymore because it doesn't exist.
Right.
So, yeah, that was funny because what year was that?
Like 2014, 13.
So 2013, 14, Micah drives up with a Chevy Volt. And I'm like, what is that? No, it was a Leaf.
It was a Nissan Leaf.
The Leaf first.
Yep.
And then best kept secret in cannabis, because they were reducing your kilowatt hour if you bought one of these electric cars for a period of 8 hours, which is what it took the car to charge, right? And they reduced it from, I don't know what we were paying in kilowatt hour back then, but it was less than half. And so if you went out and got one of these cars, the car paid for itself. Basically, you got a free car and your power bill was cut in half.
Yeah,
I think
it was
that's
amazing.
how the math worked.
It felt like it felt like we were stealing power. Right?
Yeah.
But it was legal.
It was
this
legal.
legal loophole. But literally all our friends within the period of 6 months went out and got Chevy Volts, Nissan Leafs, all these electric cars for these rebates. And like literally everyone's driving. And these are guys who can afford nice cars, but we all drove electric cars, and better for the environment.
And you didn't want a nice car when you were a grower back then.
Absolutely.
I feel like that's a recent thing.
Mm-hmm.
The
Flex
last
was different back
5-10 years. Yeah. You're like,
Honda,
if you had a Toyota truck, you're like,
So in the 90s, we all had Honda Civics. And then there was the occasional guy that got the Accord, and it's like, dude, you got to be careful. People recognize.
Check your rearview mirrors, bud.
Seriously, we're all driving Civics for a reason. We want to blend in, and that was the most popular car back in the 90s. So everybody got, some of these guys are making crazy money.
Blend.
Yeah, they're driving money wearing, we didn't really wear watches back then either, as much.
No, nothing fancy.
It wasn't a priority.
Yeah.
So, and it was more about the weed back then too, I think.
It was.
To a degree.
Yeah. No.
So people that were in it.
Remember when we used to cure in these jars and
seriously.
like burp the jars?
That was the way to do it.
And then you get like a box of these jars with just the dankest weed you've ever smoked in your life.
It was always good.
Yeah.
I recently transitioned from jar. For my personal, I went to the Terplock bags after doing side-by-side tests. And I really like Terplock. What they do is they control the humidity and they off-gas the CO2, whereas like you don't get that with the glass. The only thing is like the only disadvantage to Terplock is it's a bag. And if you put it in your backpack, you can have squished buds. And I like the shape of my buds.
Yeah.
But you can always put them in a glass jar. So.
Okay.
So I have tons of jars if you need to borrow some.
So you were using the jar method for your personal up until like
up until less than a year ago. But yeah, I've still used jars. I like jars. I like the way that, and then putting the jars, keeping them in a cool environment, it keeps your buds from getting crushed.
Yeah.
For one thing. And it looks cool because you can look at your product too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now we got the infinity jars that are UV, they're black. They work really good at keeping all the terps in.
Yeah, I like the infinity jars.
So yeah, there's so many options now. That's the beauty of the legal market, is the options. There's options for everything. And maybe it's sensory overload to a degree.
Yeah. No, I remember feeling like I was set in my ways and not learning anything for 10 years. And then when I started working in the legal market, I learned something new every day. I learned 10 new things every day. I
do too, but I forget about 5 of them.
If you retain the other 5, you're doing really well.
Yeah, seriously.
That's why you got to take notes.
Right. That's why you got to have notes. It's so important. And now you can record it and have it dictate to the notes. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, AI is amazing.
Yeah. No,
scary and amazing, and all these things.
Everything now.
Oh yeah, you can record conversations directly to notes. So it's pretty great. Some of this stuff is really amazing.
I'm still old fashioned though. I'll still pull out my notepad and transcribe it later. Like I feel like it helps
Yeah.
my process to think it out and have a notepad, even though I can type faster than I write.
Yeah, I still take notes by hand too.
Yeah,
So
I do
but you'll
too.
be able to scan them in with AI, and then it'll put them in nice notes for all your friends.
Yeah, no, I still digitize them
Oh, yeah.
afterwards.
That's
Yeah.
the best. So tell us about what you're doing now, because you're doing all kinds of cool stuff. I mean, you have a show.
Yeah.
So
So I'm doing so during COVID I was working in about 3 different states, and the airports shut down. And for my job with Cultivo, I was the main owner's rep. I was kind of the go-to for most of the project management and structure of how these buildings rolled out. And I would take on, 4 to 8 buildings at a time, and I'd be juggling a few 100,000 square feet of building at any given time in multiple different states. So I was on a plane pretty much every week for about 8 years. And then when COVID hit, I couldn't get on the plane anymore. And I had all of these, I usually would take all the projects around the same time. So I had all these buildings wrapping at once, and then a waiting list of about 600,000 square feet of building to pick up. And I just couldn't pick up the phone to take the call. I feel like a lot of people reassess their lives during COVID, and
right.
I was one of those people. So, I couldn't. Building facilities is such an intense process because you're not just building a facility, you're building an entire business model, at least the way that we do it. We have to know exactly how many plants you have in the facility. We'll calculate your clones off of that. We'll understand how much, cuts you're comfortable taking off of a mom. And then everything is built from the inside out, where typically in architectural design, it's built from the outside in.
Right.
And so, you become a part of the staff augmentation. You become a part of every part of the process. You're the person that gets called at 4 a.m. if an irrigation system goes out in, Florida or something.
Right.
So it was a lot, but I loved it. And I really enjoyed my job, my career, everything that I built. But I just got kind of tired and burnt out at the same time. So sitting at home for like 2-3 months going, I really need to take another job here, take another client on. One of a partner that I worked with previously that was a client kind of said, what are you doing? And I said, I think I'm starting a farm again. Like I want to come full circle and go back to growing. And, that kind of evolved into looking all over California, understanding the tax structure and all of the 400 plus jurisdictions and what they were doing on the local tax level. Came across Lake County for the growing climate, the tax structure, all of it, picked up these properties. And we have a 67,000 square foot manufacturing facility, which is all solventless, and allocated to, it's about 7 different buildings that make up that square footage. So we've got a drying structure that's just allocated to drying. We've got a manufacturing component that we can run solventless at scale and big kind of brewery equipment.
Nice.
We've got automated packaging, bagging, pre-rolls. I've automated everything in the facility with the best possible equipment that I could. And the idea behind that model is to, there's so many small farmers in my area, and I talked to some people and they're still trimming last year's product, husband and wife team so I feel like if we buy all of the big equipment that the corporations have, these small farmers have a chance to compete at that level if we can bring their cogs down.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Lake County is a special area. I was up in Lake County, I guess 4 or 5 years ago now, doing some seed production. And it's a beautiful place, and there's still boutique farmers up there doing a great job. And
yeah,
the environment's pretty cool. I think there's not a lot of great restaurants up there, but there's some.
There are not a lot of great restaurants, but there's a couple. Yeah, so no, I moved up to Lake County, packed my bags in LA.
You've been talking about this for a while, though, in the whole consulting thing about like getting your own grow and growing, getting your hands in the dirt again.
So the idea behind Cultivo was always to get my own facility, right? So I thought that Cultivo would be a catalyst to entering, the legal realm with my own facility.
Right.
Now, it happened almost overnight. Remember, like back when we were putting our garages together, maybe you'd spend 20 grand.
Yeah.
Then Colorado came online with these bigger buildings, and these guys were spending 100,000, 50,000.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, these buildings went from 100 to 200,000 to build out to 20 million.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of plans. And so, that was always kind of the driver behind Cultivo. But, and I really love building. I loved being able to walk away from it, give someone else the keys.
Right.
Like, okay, this is your baby now,
Totally.
And that was fun for a lot of years. But now it's fun going through the whole process again, building the staff, driving the race car.
And doing it all for yourself too.
And helping other people in the process. Like
right.
But yeah, we're definitely still growing. But our throughput, would be like 2 weeks in that facility. So
well, the licensing process up there isn't easy necessarily in Lake County.
No.
It's a little challenging for sure.
It was for a little bit. They had a program called Early Activation where it was designed to help small farmers get to the other side. So they would give them a temporary license. And then what happened with that is I think everyone kind of thought it was a building permit. So they started grading and doing major work. And so the county shut down that program.
Right.
And then made everyone go through the process, which is about, and this is, someone who expedites plans for a living. It's taken us 2.5 years per project to get through.
Much different than LA.
LA's got its own challenges. LA will take you 3 years just to get your power drop.
Right.
But yeah, they've all got their different challenges. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Nice. And you guys are planted this year?
We're planted. Yeah, we're planted on 2 acres, roughly. And that's kind of what I would call our R&D farm. So where we'd probably run autos, run different genetics, cultivars, see what we want to put in rotation.
Nice.
And then we're building kind of another farm up the street from that. And that'll be going in probably next year, 2024. Nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you want to try one of these pre-rolls?
I do, but I'm going to get high as fuck.
No. So this is actually some Skittles.
Okay.
And it's mild. It has a ceiling, so it doesn't get you too high. My business partner, he doesn't smoke weed, but so I've been working on these pre-rolls, getting the right tip. We have the bamboo crush in here from Organitips, the right paper. I like rice paper actually better than these, but I do like raw. I like supporting raw. Love them or hate them. I like their.
You like the paper.
I like the paper.
Product.
I do. Well, I like the company too.
Yeah.
And but I do like the way rice paper tastes. I feel like it's not as harsh as hemp papers. So we've been working on the right temperature to where like I was doing real fatties that were bigger. We've done them smaller, and these ones actually
nice.
Yeah, you can dry hit it.
Are these all like Knox boxes?
No, these are all hand rolled, and we're gonna have them numbered per, one of X amount. And I think it's a fun product, and it's gonna be a while before we launch anything like this. But I really enjoy the flavor, and it has. If they're too wide, they burn too hot. You don't get the terps. If they're too narrow, they don't get as many terps because you're just not able to draw in as many. But so I feel like it's the perfect balance. And like the 3.5 grams is a nice round eighth.
You always come with the big fatty joints, and then I watch me get real quiet really quick.
Yeah. I like the way they smoke. I feel like the flavor is the best. And if you have good flour, you can refire it at any one point. You can put it back in the tube that it came in, let it sit for a day or even 2 days. If it's really good, you can fire it back up and it still tastes good.
Yeah, you're probably like the best joint roller, I think, in the industry. Is there a title for that? I feel like every time I run into you, you have like this perfectly rolled,
well, it's like
joint.
How I like to smoke too.
Yeah.
And so I really put a lot of attention to detail into what I'm smoking. And but yeah, there's guys that do better. Professional Joy Roller at Instagram. He was on the podcast and he does really good stuff. And he can roll 125 of them a day. I can't do that.
Wow. That's a lot. Yeah, I'm really bad at rolling joints still, even 20 years later. It's like a mental block for me.
Right.
So I always buddy up to someone like you so that, hey, can you roll a joint?
As long as they smoke.
I mean, I could make it happen, but
Yeah.
it's not pretty.
Totally. Looks like a bent toothpick. Like,
they're all about 5 to 6 months pregnant.
yeah, that's okay. They say it's better to try and have failed than never to have tried. But yeah, we almost died in a private jet 5 years ago.
The PJ incident.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh my God.
We were flying out of LA and it wasn't LAX, it was Burbank, I believe.
Well, it was the private jet airport in Van Nuys there next to Burbank Airport.
Right.
But we had a wealthy client. It wasn't our private jet, just to...
No. No. It was
We're not there yet.
Right.
So yeah, we were going somewhere.
Yeah.
And that was crazy. I still tell that story when people tell me they're afraid of airplanes. I'm like,
Well, what I remember about it was that we flew up to 1,500 feet and then we fell out of the sky. And I remember my phone, and I was wearing my seatbelt loose because I remember my butt completely off of the seat and my cell phone hit the ceiling and then flew to the back of the plane. And then my coffee cup. So your coffee, I think your coffee went all over you. And then my coffee cup went up in the air.
it did a couple 360s and landed on my head.
And landed on your head, yes.
One in my lap, one on my head.
I don't think I had coffee in mine, luckily.
No, there was, because I had to go take a shower at the airport because I was covered in coffee. But we were just taking off from the airport. And I mean, we just dropped. Like, it was at that moment, you're like...
We fell 500 feet out of the sky. Literally 500 feet.
And we were only 1,500 up.
Yeah.
So it's not very far.
No, and it was like a roller coaster, but way crazier. But I guess what had happened in that area in Burbank, like by the airport over there, you have to coast because there's all the houses, and so they actually take up to a certain elevation and then have to coast. And when the pilot was going up to 1,500 feet, she pushed the autopilot button, and we didn't go into autopilot.
Her knee knocked it out or something like that. I remember she tried to explain the story like 3 times, and then the real story came out.
Yeah.
As our buddy was kind of new planes and was prodding about what just happened. Yeah, no, that was really, it was that moment where you're like, oh, this is what seatbelts are for on airplanes.
Totally.
Like, you don't realize like...
No, if you fall out of the sky, you're going to want to be in a seatbelt.
Yeah, you can break your neck on the roof of the plane very easily. I realize that. So when I get into an airplane now, every time I sit down, I'm buckling the seatbelt, tightening it. Like that's definitely your best friend in the sky.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was freaked out about flying for maybe 6 months, a little bit after that, but I was working everywhere. So I was having to fly to Europe and I was having to fly to Mexico and flying all over. And so I had to fly, but like takeoffs and landings, I always like the shaking.
You got some trauma from it?
Oh, seriously. Yeah? I had some serious trauma for like a while.
Yeah.
I don't get it anymore, but like, because I literally had to fly back and then 2 days later I had to fly again. And so I was flying, but I literally would like be holding onto my seat like, oh shit. Like mentally I wasn't ready for it, but.
That was my second plane incident, by the way. There was one previous to that.
Wow.
I was on a Southwest flight. Now, I won't fly Southwest anymore, but I'm not afraid of flying. Like, I really do love being in an airplane.
Right. I don't like Southwest either. Yeah.
So I was going from LA to Denver, and I was with Tracy Ryan from Canna Kids, and she's always high intensity to travel with anyway, 'cause she's got her daughter at home that has cancer. So, we're on this plane and I just smell burning wires, like electrical fire. And the whole plane like kind of fills up with smoke and there's electrical wires burning. And then the pilot comes on and he goes, we're going to have to make an emergency landing in Las Vegas. I was like, oh my God, we're on the way to Denver. So luckily the Las Vegas airport was right there. I walked back to the little stewardess cart and I grabbed like a bunch of mini bottles of alcohol, like him and Tracy. I'm like, here.
Oh man.
If we're going to die today, we're drinking some whiskey first.
Yeah.
And so threw a couple of those back, landed, and it was all good and fine. But I won't fly Southwest to this day.
Yeah, I was on a flight last year and it got hit by lightning. And I was like, I literally saw the lightning coming in and the whole sky got yellow. And
so maybe that's the problem. We can't travel together anymore. It's like
totally
bad juju.
It's like,
We gotta take separate flights.
Yeah. But when it got hit by lightning, I was like, oh shit, that's bad, right? And the guy like 2 seats over, he was like, no. These planes are designed to let the electrical current pass through it. And so he's like, it's no big deal. Happens all the time. And then he went on to tell me about the supercell that he went through when he was landing in LAX one time. And he got hit like 40 or 50 times with lightning.
It's designed to go right through it?
The lightning is designed to go right through the airplane.
Wow.
So pretty cool.
It makes sense that
technology.
That would be the case. Yeah.
Yeah. When are you filming? You guys have another season you're filming, or how's that stuff going?
It's not.
It's not?
No. I'm so busy. I'm working like 100 hours a week right now. I'm building out our whole facility and doing all the construction management for it, and also kind of managing the farm. And so there was just no time with all the development we have going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You put a lot of production work into it. It was a great show.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, no, I'm just laser focused on getting everything built out, up and running, surviving the California market, so to speak.
Totally.
It's been a roller coaster.
It's been a rough time for a lot of people, and a lot rougher than we've both had it. Although, it's still been tough.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of navigating. It's not just easy.
Yeah. I think I remember now that, we didn't always do really well at this, and it was a struggle for a long time, just getting started, getting going, making cultivation make sense, being the buyer, the distributor, the salesperson, every part for your brand. Like when you're coming up, that I don't know if I've just gotten tougher over the years, but it hasn't, it could be a lot worse.
You were really tough back in the day.
Thank you.
You've always been tough.
Thank you.
And you really have to get to the point where you're at. It takes a lot of toughness, mental toughness, attitude, being able to say no.
Yes.
Those kind of things. I mean, I think those are all important, and it's good lessons to learn for everybody. So
yeah, being able to say no when things don't serve you, even when they sound really good, is a big part of my philosophy. And just listening to your gut instinct and kind of backing yourself on those plays when they don't feel right,
Totally. So if you had any advice for your younger self that was maybe 1 to 2 years into this, what advice would you give yourself?
Save the money. It doesn't last forever.
Right.
No, yeah, I think back when we were growing even small scale, the packs were worth exponentially more. So
totally.
Running a 12 lighter was like running a 50 lighter now, or whatever the equivalent is to that, maybe more, maybe
it's
100 lights.
Exponentially bigger to make the same amount of money.
Yeah. No, advice to my younger self. Yeah, I think better management of money. I feel like I've really learned that in my later in my career.
Me too. Me too. I think you have to be.
And especially when we just had this recent crash, everybody did these rapid expansions.
Oh my God, I know.
That's why we have a lot of failure in the industry right now, because people thought that this model, this price point was going to last forever and that the market share was infinite, and it's not.
So many people scaled.
Yeah.
So many people scaled. They got money from the government, not necessarily in cannabis, but with everything, even restaurants. I saw a lot of stuff that people thought it was going to last forever, or that they weren't going to have to pay their money back that they got, and it's
the best CFOs in the world making these calls. And I don't blame them for it. Like, you're looking at the numbers, they make sense. The expansion makes sense.
Totally.
You'll at least make your money back. Like, that's what everybody thought. And then everybody thought the same thing at the same time, and they all went big. And then
I saw some completed projects, and then I saw a bunch of half-finished projects where people realized, because the project took so long, that this isn't a good idea.
Right.
So all over, and I think
I get calls every week.
Yeah. Like Washington went through the second round of consolidation. Like I didn't realize there was going to be a second round. I don't think a lot of people did.
Probably a third.
Yeah, and there probably will be a third, and that's
Down
just
the
how.
line.
Yeah, that's just how it works.
No, I think we saw that consolidation in Colorado, Washington, Oregon, anywhere you had, the ability to get a license. It wasn't a monopoly. Had a saturation point. It had to.
Right.
Except California's over 40 million people or 39 million people, whatever it is. Colorado was about 4 million people when their program started.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like timing a small country instead of a state. So it's a difficult market to track, even if you've worked in multiple markets. I don't think anyone expected what was going to happen.
No, and I think it's interesting with these international markets going online to see what's going to happen with places like Germany as they progress.
Yeah.
And, even Colombia is still, I mean, they've been around a while, but they're in their infancy to a degree of the whole legalization and how they're going to do it, import export. Places like Portugal that really are banking on places like Germany for import. But if Germany doesn't allow
Portugal's got the climate.
Portugal totally has the climate. Yeah.
I mean, I would be worried about, Mexico for sure. That would be like top of my list to be worried about. And you're talking about countries like it's going to go the way of anything in ag, right? Where it splits off and you have these large commodity producers that are just cranking this stuff out for pennies on the dollar. Right. And then hopefully we have our, home breweries that are farm to table and have that whole ethos and vibe behind it. Why people buy organic food and why people are caring more about their health and what they put in their bodies these days.
Right.
I think the same thing will happen with cannabis. At least I'm heavily banking on it.
Yeah, me too. And I think genetic diversity is going to come back into play, things like that. And then terroir, we start talking about outdoor farms in Humboldt and Mendocino and Sonoma and Oregon, where it is like the microbrewery model. And they can do them vertically integrated. I'd love to see a lot of that going on, where you can go to the shop that they grow it on site. I mean, Skunk VA from the last episode, he was talking about he's vertically integrated. And I love that. And I think outdoor farmers, indoor farmers, but having the small boutique model, I love it. I feel like that's so much more attainable for the average person that loves weed, that wants to be in the industry, or younger person coming in. And you see that it's much more attainable than owning this huge mega $1 million company. And so we don't want to ever get rid of that boutique model, because that's where the quality lies, is in the boutique and in the passionate people. It's all boutique product. And there is product that's really good grown at scale, but there's always the boutique stuff, which I love boutique farmers. And those are the most passionate people too.
Yeah. I think it should be no different than, tasting rooms for wine. I would love to see tasting rooms all over our county at different farms where people can come up and visit and learn about the plant.
Yeah.
And, have an experience, right? Like,
at the end of the day, it's all about experiences, and what better way to have an experience than smoke a good joint of someone's stuff, or be able to experience their facility and the stuff they go through harvesting, and being able to see big plants. I think there's just something to be said for big plants also.
Sure.
The beauty of what a big plant actually looks like back when we were up in Sonoma, and they'd be 12 feet tall by 10 feet wide, and
massive.
It just,
there is something about it. I'm not gonna. But it depends how you scale, what things make sense at that point, and you just have to do what works for you. I mean, at Cultivo, we built every model of every type of grow, hydroponic, aquaponics, like
you pretty much were able to test out pretty much all the different systems over the years and you worked in almost every state too.
Not every state.
Not every state, but in most of the legal states up until recently, it seemed like you had.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had a footprint in most of the legal states.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a few we've missed.
Yeah, and you were doing licensing and you were doing all kinds of other stuff. Great stuff.
Yeah, we do the licensing. I mean, by default, and working in some of the more restrictive states where licensing, sometimes it costs $1 million just to throw the paint at the wall and see if it sticks. So you have to have a full set of plans going in. You have to have your board, and it's crazy. Like, I think New York applications were like 1,000 pages or something like that.
So crazy.
Then they put word count limits after that because people were pulling up in U-Haul trucks, just dropping their applications out.
Oh, God.
And you'd have to have 10 copies, like one for each reviewer. And so it was just like U-Hauls with stacked binders of SOPs and information. It is wild.
Yeah.
That's actually my least favorite part of the process. If I had to pick anything in cannabis that I don't like doing anymore, it'd be the application component.
I bet. It's doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
Having to deal with the people that you have to deal with too. And people that as far as what I've seen and experienced a lot of actually from you back in the day, having to re-educate people about their own laws, and they're the government entity that should understand it. And you're actually having to go through the educational process.
Yeah. Can you build this? What is it classified as? What can we do in this facility?
Right.
And then so you can't just flip rooms and take your commercial kitchen and then put it into your grow space. So I like the plan part of it. I like the construction management part of it. I like actually physically building the facility and watching the progress as it comes together.
Right.
But yeah, the planning process is always the biggest hurdle, I think, at least for me.
So out of all the projects you've done, which one stands out the most?
Favorite project? Oh God, there's so many for so many reasons. I feel like my newest project is always my favorite.
Yeah.
Until I get the next one. Like, I don't look back. There's facilities that I would say the majority of the facilities that I've designed and managed the construction, I've not been back inside once they were operational.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you never get to see the actual.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
But the majority of the time I'm working on the next thing and I'm moving on to the next thing. Like I'm really passionate about only seeing what's right in front of me. And I don't like look back and reminisce. I'll pull things that evolve over the years about different parts that I like of a structure, how you walk into a gowning room, how where you place certain things. It just becomes like second nature,
Right. No, but so tell us a little bit about Israel, and you did some cool things over in Israel, and I think that'd be great to share.
Yeah, I started traveling to Israel with my friend Tracy Ryan that I almost died on the Southwest flight with. Her daughter Sophie has what's known as an optic pathway glioma tumor, which is a tumor that wraps itself around the optic nerve of the eye. And they have a really high survival rate. So it's not like a high risk cancer in that respect, but they also have a very high recurrence rate.
Wow.
It's an inoperable tumor. So as it wraps itself around the optic nerve, the child slowly loses their vision. And so Tracy was told that, by the time her daughter was 2, she was going to lose her sight completely.
Wow.
She started her on cannabis at 8 months old. This was pre-Charlotte's Web. It was before anyone was doing it. There was no Sanjay Gupta. She just got all these random signs to give her daughter cannabis. And her story, the way she tells it, is much more eloquent and incredible. She gathered all these medical connections and started doing research all over the world. And we found, she found this Dr. Dedi Miri, who is a scientist out of the University of Technion, which is Israel's basically equivalent to MIT. He was working within a $100 million lab at his disposal. And he was doing all this cannabis research that we had not done here before. So we actually, from her daughter's prior brain surgery, Tracy was able to get a live sample and basically take it to Israel, had to declare it and all that stuff. And then we met with a doctor that was going to take the sample, put it into rats. Then they pump human blood into the rats with the same mutations or same specific type of tumor, and then test that tumor against different cannabinoid profiles that may help fight the disease and cause cell death around this tumor, essentially. So that was my first trip to Israel, and I met Dr. Daddy Muri, and I was just blown away by him still to this day. I mean, the man publishes.
You introduced me to him.
Paper after paper, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the first time I met him, I'm like, I will quit my job and come and mop your floors for the rest of my life. Like, I just want to learn from you. So that, he's kind of my connection over there to the country and everything else. And so kind of pop over there and see what medical science is doing and how that
it's
all
pretty amazing
works.
The stuff they're doing over there, as opposed to the process that we have to go through for drug discovery here. There's so much red tape involved that it makes it difficult, almost impossible to do anything. Whereas over there, most of the studies and stuff, if you want to do a double blindfolded study, is a phone call away. And the government's very supportive of everything, just the opposite of here. It's the polar opposite.
Polar opposite, and the
slowly changing, hopefully.
Slowly changing. I know hemp's opening the door for a lot of that research, and the main reason behind it for people that don't know is that you cannot bring a Schedule I substance onto a university property where all of the grand labs are.
Yep.
Without putting their federal funding as a school at risk, even if the doctor on the other side holds a Schedule I research license. So it's been this weird oxymoron that we cannot study cannabis through our universities unless it came out of the University of Mississippi, which we, kind of all know what happened there.
Right.
It's a federally funded grow that was really growing trash product. And it's the only place that scientists could legally get cannabis from.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard since then there's a few facilities that have come online that have better product and actually care, but that work is just starting, and we're at a very nascent stage where Israel, because it's a small country, not a lot of people. You could do these micronized studies, and at the time, I know there's more now. There was only 8 licensed grows in Israel, so you could actually track back. Like I know they did an autism study. And they had these kids who were violently autistic, like to the point where they would attack their parents and things like that. And Dr. Daddy Muri put them on, schedule regimen, same strain, same dosage, same everything, consistency, grown out of the same greenhouse.
Chemovar specific.
Yeah. And then he got, thank you. And then he got a phone call one day that one of these kids out of a year and a half of studies had, attacked one of his parents. And then he got another call with the same thing. So he immediately went over there and looked at what the dosage was and then takes it back, tests the product, goes to the grower. Did you replace the strain? He goes, no, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. But through a series of conversations and tests, they realized that he actually lost that specific cultivar and replaced it with something very similar, which caused this complete outbreak of multiple episodes. So when you're talking about medicine, that's that finite, that's that specific, and then you come back to the States and people are just making wild recommendations about dosing on people's health.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But luckily, it's a fairly safe plant. It's not going to hurt you.
Well, and the thing with that,
we have a lot to learn.
Right. We have a ton to learn. On that level with chemovars, it's not just the cultivar, it's also the nutrition and environment that dictates the cannabinoid profile. And so there could be a change in their environment, like they got a new fan, and it could produce a different chemovar.
At that time in Israel, it was all greenhouse, mostly shade structures.
Right. But throughout the year, you could, if you have lighting from the sun, you could have a different product, an end product that had a different profile potentially.
Sure.
And we still don't even understand there's so many cannabinoids that we don't even understand all of them because they're in such small amounts.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a trip.
Yeah. So, I mean, the future of medical for the scientists that really care and the people that really care, I'm looking forward to people feeling like they're more dialed in because it's a different consumer experience. You talk to so many people that are like, tried that devil's lettuce once and
Right.
wasn't for me, never again. Almost ended up in the hospital. Thought, most of the time it's anxiety attack from overdosing or taking
I
too
called
much,
911.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And it happens quite often. So I think the more educated the consumer, the better, right?
Yeah.
Like, we know we can't go buy a bottle of whiskey and drink it.
Yeah,
I mean, you
wouldn't eat
could, but you
100
wouldn't like the end
milligram
result.
typically.
Yeah.
The first time you eat it, you shouldn't eat 100 milligrams.
Right.
Although we didn't measure that stuff back in the day. Now we know, and now we can eat 10 milligrams and see how
Yeah.
that responds, or 5 milligrams and see how that responds with us.
Yeah. Before you just hope you didn't get the wrong corner of the brownie and
Seriously,
go.
the wrong arm of the gummy bear. Like, yeah.
yeah. So continuity is important.
Yeah. So if people want to know more about you, your brand, where do they go?
So I'm at Instagram, autumn_cultivo, CULTIVO. We also have our Alchemy29 Instagram, which is our manufacturing and processing facility. So that's alchemy.29 on Instagram. Also the same as the website, alchemy29.com.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we'll be open in October for drying services, pre-roll services. We do full white labeling. We can pump out, thousands of bags and products per hour. So
That's awesome.
Exciting.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on the show today. It's
Thank
been
you for
awesome.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to do it again sometime. I think we're going to be doing some live shows from farms. So maybe at some point we can come check you out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Come see us in Lake County. And we've also got a lot of cool partner farms in the area, and you could do like a whole little tour through there. It'd be really fun.
Yeah, totally. Well, yeah, thanks again, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Awesome.